Hey guys, Brooke Whipple here. Welcome to my channel. Today's special treat, I've got a guest here with me, and it's Bush Radical. That's right, Dave Whipple, my husband. Today we're going to be talking about the items that we chose for our season 4 on History Channel's Alone TV show. That's where we went out and spent 49 days in the wilderness on Vancouver Island. So stick with me to find out what we chose and why. Alright, so how do you want to run it? Why don't you start it off? Because you're better. Mine look a little crooked.
Yeah.
It does.
Or mine's a little crooked. I'm not crooked, but I'm a poor bookkeeper. My wife's a good bookkeeper, but she's a little crooked.
Well guys, welcome back. We are sitting around an awesome campfire here. It is February, but we're having this weird weather that's going back and forth, and it doesn't know whether it wants to snow or it wants to rain. So we're kind of in between here. We're getting outside and having a nice fire. Thought we'd bring our gear and have a chat.
All right, let's get into what we took and why we took it, and whether or not we take it again, and if it was a great, ingenious idea or if it was completely stupid. Let's start with Gorp. This isn't Gorp. This is a Gorp substitute that's just something in the bag. This is old cranberries. And
it calls in the predators in the area. So you've got to feed them and make them go away.
Daisy loves cranberries.
Here you go.
The Gorp we took out was actually peanuts, raisins, and chocolate chips. Good chocolate chips.
Dark chocolate chips.
Well, you're right.
Those are terrible.
Cranberries are junk, man. They're like 1,000 years old.
They've been in the cupboard too long. So yeah, we each got to take 2.5 pounds of rations, as that's one of the things you could choose. So that was definitely both something we both wanted to take, so we each took the same thing. We each took the Gorp.
Now, there was a lot of different choices. You could take pemmican or beef jerky or flour, or there was lots of choices. But hindsight, I think the Gorp was the perfect choice.
It was perfect. And why was it perfect? When you're starving, you want so many different things, but Gorp, it will give you a flavor of 3 things. You get the protein from the peanuts and the salt. Raisins are just something sweet, and the benefit of the raisins is after a while, the peanuts in the bag, all the salt came off and landed on the raisins. So you had like this sweet and salty raisin, which was just amazing.
I'm sure the raisins got some kind of carbohydrates, and so does the peanut.
Yeah, definitely carbohydrates.
There's like nothing in nature that's good for carbohydrates out there.
Nothing.
You're just eating protein when you eat.
And then, of course, the chocolate chip was amazing. To have just let that little piece of chocolate melt on your tongue, it was really, really nice. Having
chocolate out there was pretty special. It got down towards the end where we'd eat our raisins in thirds and our chocolate chip. It'd take a couple minutes to eat a chocolate chip. And it's such a treat a couple times a day, just a little tiny pile of that. And you could have a little bite of each one. And you know, the funny thing about it is, like, people like, I'd take beef jerky or I'd take pemmican. It was a 2-pound bag that we took. I could pound 2 pounds of beef jerky on the way to get more beef jerky. It had never lasted, and it would have just been redundant because we had all the protein. All the stuff we had to eat was all protein anyway. We didn't have anything else, and jerky would have just been more protein.
Yeah, it was an amazing thing to have. Dave, once we got together, of course, our time together didn't start until day 9. So after that, he was kind of like in charge of the bag of Gorp for whatever reason. And it was like Pavlov out there. Every time I'd hear that plastic, I would just be like, oh, it's time for just a little, you know, tiny handful of whatever. Maybe a couple raisins, maybe a peanut, maybe a chocolate chip. And it was such a big deal. And I was pretty proud of us that we made our Gorp combined last 40 days, which was an incredibly long time for such a small amount of food.
And I think the reason I ended up with the Gorp in like my possession is because we had a mouse get into it on a couple different occasions, so it ended up going in my backpack.
It was heartbreaking.
but something that can last for 40 days, then every day you have a couple little bites of something that you could never find in nature. It was the perfect choice, in my opinion. Totally.
I would not have changed that choice.
No.
It was the perfect choice. I would still stand by that to this day.
Now, we also took this pot.
Hold on. Is this smoke gonna just be so annoying?
Oh. They're almost like candied now. I'm getting used to them again.
Yeah, they're not so tasty.
Well, now the smoke's not going that way. We had to move these cameras to get them out of the smoke. Hopefully it's a little better on this side. So to wrap up the whole idea of the gorp was perfect in our opinions.
I absolutely think the gorp was the best decision we made out there for food. And of course we supplemented with the fish. If you guys watched the show, you saw us catch a lot of fish. Our total count at the end of the show, I believe, was 56 fish total. And you divide that by 2 and 49 days, that's a long time with not much food. And it's a good opportunity.
Get out of here, Daisy.
And it's a good opportunity to talk about the food out there. This smoke is now going to the cameras. This is ridiculous.
We moved the cameras just to fix the smoke problem, and now the smoke's going that way.
There was, you know, we launched October 24th, which is late fall. I mean, it's basically winter. And as far as greenery, there was nothing in the forest to eat. I found maybe 4 chanterelles the whole entire time I was there. And they were past their prime. Maybe 10 huckleberries. So you're not going to get any sustenance from the forest there. It was all ocean going food. Limpets, clams and mollusks. All the bivalves were off limits to us because of the red tide. So you don't have a lot of options. You're fishing, you're very limited with the terrain. The terrain really hems you in, and when you're starving, until you've seen the terrain on Vancouver Island and understand that you just don't go for a stroll and find a new spot to fish without a massive amount of calories and energy being expended. We did the best we could with our area. I don't know what you have to say about that.
The fish we caught ranged between about, if we caught 56 fish, we probably caught 10 or 12 that were hand-sized. You'd get smaller rockfish, and you'd get these almost look like a tropical fish, about the size of a big bluegill. But everything after that was kelp greenling, and that's a pretty good sized fish. So we were doing pretty good with the fishing until it ran out. Of course, season 4 was the latest of all the seasons starting on Vancouver Island. So we already had that against us. That year had a non-existent salmon run, and we had the worst weather of any season. So we felt pretty blessed to be able to get as many fish as we did.
And of course, the end of the day, we left on day 49 because of weight, ultimately, because of, you're starving out there. I lost 28 pounds. I was down to 97 pounds.
I lost 43 pounds, but I was padded going in, so I was down to 193.
It's not fun to starve.
Let's move on to the rest of the gear. And we took this coffee pot. This beauty right there. Now, we picked this coffee pot up at a yard sale several years ago for $2. And it's probably from the 40s. It's very heavy duty aluminum. It's probably the most solid 2-quart pot that you're gonna find, because it's 50, 60 years old. And as far as what we thought of that, what was your impression of the pot?
I love this pot. I mean, this was such a lifesaver to have a pot. We were blessed with a nice creek coming right out of the mountain. Fresh water. We never even boiled it, but by nature we boiled it for tea every day anyway, but we drank right out of the stream. It's coming right out of the mountain. And so we got to have tea every single day. And we only had this pot for tea. We did not put any food in there. And when it's so cold and you're just needing something hot to drink, having a dedicated vessel just for tea was really awesome. It was really the key. I love this pot. It was a great choice.
not only is a pot like this a little bit different because it doesn't have a bail, but we never hang anything over a fire. We just chuck it in the coals next to the fire. But it's got a Bakelite handle, never burned. It's just it's got a percolator unit that goes in it. It's a coffee pot.
We didn't take the percolator.
No, we didn't take the percolator, but the pot, this is probably an heirloom quality pot we'll pass down to our kids. It's that nice of an old pot.
Can I have a shot of tea?
Absolutely.
We got some pine needle tea going in here right now. Some white pine needle tea. Out there we drank hemlock tea every day, at least one whole pot, and
this is the bottom of the barrel, so it's got, can you grab my cup?
Oh, I didn't see it over there.
It's got a lot of junk in the bottom, but not every item we picked was a great choice, but this pot was.
One of the coolest finds out there. I found a glass jar just like this in the woods, buried. This apparently this spot that we were at was probably an old logging camp many 60 years ago. And I found this buried in the moss. And so we could have something to pour hot tea into, and we would share this back and forth. And our last week there, unfortunately, I was pouring hot tea right into the glass, and I was right by the fire, and it exploded all over my feet and severely burned my foot. I had a sock on at the time. And I don't know, we really mourned the loss of that cup when it busted, because it's just the little things out there make all the difference.
Yeah, having a cup that you can pass back and forth, because of course we didn't take one, so just having a cup that you could wrap your hands around, it was toasty warm to drink your tea out of. As far as dump finds go, we were pretty happy to run across that glass.
Yeah, mentally.
It was a peanut butter jar, I think, right?
I don't know, but to find an intact jar in the woods when you have nothing, I mean, you're just every little thing matters out there. Beachcombing
is a big part of that, looking for stuff you can use. And to actually find an intact glass jar in that environment was pretty amazing. And when it broke, it was a pretty sad day.
Yeah.
We'll talk about our pan.
Yeah.
This is the pan we chose to take. Our idea was we'd keep our food and our beverages separate by having a frying pan and having a pot. That way you're not, cooking fish guts in the same thing that you're trying to drink warm liquids out of all day. And the pan?
The pan was $1. It came from a flea market. Now, one of the things alone, they only let you bring a steel pot, a steel pan. You can't bring anything else. So, of course, you get into the ocean environment and it's going to get really rusty. Although
Yep.
We did treat it before we left. We seasoned it. There's virtually no way to keep this from rusting out on the ocean.
No.
Overall thoughts on the pan, we both agree we would not choose this again.
Huh.
It had a couple of utilitarian purposes. I used it for scooping beach gravel when I made both of our fireplaces.
It was also good to use as a catch when we
Yeah.
were shaving wood to start our fires with. You get a big pile of shavings and then hit it with a ferro rod.
Yeah, at the end of our stay, this was basically where I kept all of our fire starter stuff, all of the shavings. It was under our bunks, and every time we would start a fire, you just pull this out and there's your stuff.
But as a one item to take along with you, it definitely wasn't worth taking a pan to do what we ended up doing with the pan.
And
now,
that also, it's because we cooked every single fish that we caught right over the fire.
Yeah.
We didn't put it in any kind of a vessel, and that really is such a great and efficient way to cook your fish, so we just didn't need the pan.
Hindsight, what would you have taken in place of the pan?
Oh, I totally would have taken a Leatherman.
Leatherman would have been really nice. If you wanted to stay with the same idea, 2 pots. I could see 2 pots. You could do a fish soup that's always cooking, along with your grilled fish, like a fish gut soup, fish head soup. But that that frying pan. If it was a stainless steel pan, it probably would have got used more, but it didn't take any time to get it to rust, and there's no way to keep it maintained in that environment. It wasn't the best idea.
I remember cooking limpets and some periwinkles.
Gunnels.
And some gunnels in here, and what you end up doing is you get that nice fishy flavor with just a little flavor of rust.
Yeah.
And it's really unappealing and really unappetizing. So it didn't take us long to not use this pan.
That was a gross meal.
It was a gross meal. But we, you know, for scooping things and moving material, I mean, it is something that was sturdy and you could use it for that.
Makes a decent shovel.
Yeah. So we each chose a white tarp, and white on purpose.
We each had 5 items we could pick beyond a knife, a sleeping bag, and a ferro rod between the two of us. So we each got 5 choices. We each chose 1 tarp. So we took 2 tarps as 2 of our 10 items that we could pick.
I couldn't be happier with choosing a white tarp and choosing 2 of them. We were going into a rainforest. I mean, the biggest thing you've got going against you is the dampness, the wetness. You have to keep dry. And knowing that we were going to have 2 tarps,
I love you too.
It was huge. We actually used 1 for our shelter, and even so importantly, we had like this dedicated, our other white tarp we dedicated to an area to cut all of our wood. And I mean, we cut wood, and we cut more wood. So having a place to get out of the rain and cut all your wood for the day.
I'm gonna retake that. Fine, get out of there, Daisy. Get back there where the cranberries are, hippie.
I'll give her some.
Why white? Psychologically, white is superior to every other tarp in the world. If you're under a green tarp, you basically have this green pall cast upon everything. It's like being seasick without being seasick. Brown is almost
dark.
black. It's, you know, it's going to make everything you do inside that much more dreary because the light is going to be so poor. But with white, it's just like daylight underneath the tarp, and it made all the difference. There's not even a plan B. It's a white tarp or nothing if you've got a choice.
And how do we know that white is so effective like that? That's because all of our time spent in Alaska, we've spent a ton of time living in white wall tents.
Lots
and if
of
you've
time.
ever been in an army green wall tent, you know the stark difference between having all that natural daylight around you and just feeling like you're in a cave. Huge difference to your mental stability, and that was going to be a big deal out there, is keeping your brain from ingesting itself, from imploding. So the white tarp was one of the best decisions we made.
Yeah, if you're working on something, everybody knows somebody that's got a garage that's just a dungeon. It's super dark. You go in, there's a little light, you can't see anything, and it's a miserable place to work. Now imagine if you were working inside of a greenhouse that's all clear, and it's just like daylight, but inside. That's the same thing you get with a white tarp. It's not when you take your area that you're in 12, 14, 16 hours a day, and you make it just as bright as it is outside, it was so pleasant. It was so wonderful. There is no other option. It's white tarp, or I mean, imagine being under a blue tarp. I mean, green's bad, and brown is like you're just in a dungeon, but blue, oh my goodness,
Just kill me now.
Yeah, it's just depressing.
All right, the next thing we brought is fishing line and hooks.
And we found that all the fish out there really did better on a smaller hook. Larger hooks, they seem to be, it's a small mouth fish. Even the bigger fish, they're a smaller mouth fish. There's nothing out there that's like a pike that could swallow a softball. You know, the small hooks seem to work the best. One of the things too was the fact that you can't bring any spectrum or spider wire or anything out there, so it's just monofilament. So we brought, and you can bring as many different sizes as you want, but it's a 300-yard limit. We brought a 20-pound test, a 10-pound test, and a 50-pound test.
This is the fishing pole for better lack of a term, that Dave carved for me out there. And what we would do is just wind it on. You just need something that will wrap around that, so when you throw it out, it just kind of comes off the end of the, I don't know what you call this. And we had two different types of weights. The biggest problem out there was we're fishing off the rocks, and the rocks are covered in barnacles, so it's totally always catching our
snags and breaking line and cutting line.
Yeah, cutting our line, grabbing the hooks. We're losing hooks, and it's crushing to lose hooks out there because you just have 25 hooks. And
that's one thing we found really quick right off the bat. After you start losing a few hooks the first day, you're like, this is gonna be the problem. So we kind of had to figure a way to work around that, and we'll get to that in another video.
Yeah, but this has worked out so good. Next thing we decided to bring was an obvious choice again for us, which is the axe. And Dave is, he has restored and redone so many axes. This is really his lane. I'm gonna let him tell you about the axe.
I've talked about this axe on my channel lots of times, but the thought behind the axe is just as important as the axe itself. What we wanted to do out there, and what we were able to do, is we wanted to have indoor fire. Something where we can have a fire inside. That means a lot of cut firewood, and that means a lot of split firewood. It's very popular to have a small Swedish axe that's super thin and razor sharp, which in my personal opinion is pretty much a carpenter's tool. It's not really a forest tool, regardless of what people call it. An axe like this, that's a full-size 3.5 pound axe that you can split big rounds with. This opens up the world to you as far as fire processing. Can you do fine carving with it? We don't do fine carving with an axe anytime. And I'm sorry for stepping on people's toes on that, but that's just a fact. The knives we took were for if we needed to carve anything, which we generally didn't. But the axe, having an axe that can split 6 cords of firewood for your winter supply of wood, that's what you want, in my opinion, in that situation, because it opens the world up to you of what you can do with this tool. A small light razor sharp axe, well, it's good for hewing, and like if you're making a totem pole, it'd be perfect. Something sharp that penetrates really well, that's more of a carpenter's tool, perfect. But if you need to split around that big, you're never going to do it with a little light duty, forest hatchet.
And what this is peace of mind. This is a tool that is going to really be effective in keeping you warm, and that's a huge, huge deal.
Absolutely. There's a bit of a soapbox on this axe, but honestly, just in the world of bushcraft and outdoor pursuits, it seems to be the popular thing to have a very small, very light, very thin, razor sharp axe. And honestly, what you use an axe for, at least in our situation, 99% of the time, was splitting wood. If I needed to fell a tree with this axe, I could fell a tree very easy with this axe.
And you did.
Lots and lots of
you
times.
You cut down a lot of trees.
But the duty that this axe got put to more than anything else was splitting firewood. And honestly, if you're gonna split fire, you almost can't have the conversation about an axe without talking about a saw. They complement each other. They're peanut butter and jelly. And this is the saw that we took.
Now this saw is just like the saw I grew up with, and probably just like the saw you grew up with.
Absolutely.
It is the perfect size. It's so sturdy. It feels like it's not ever going to break. And another super, super reliable tool that we just did not want to be without. There's a lot of saws out there. There's a lot of folding saws. People are really passionate about their saws. And we just like the old school bow saw. And I was so satisfied with this saw out there. And we cut cords of wood with this. Not only building our cabin, but processing firewood. And to think that you could rely on this blade and this saw every single day for your warmth, for your ability to stay out there, I would not pick any other saw. And this is a $5 saw?
Yeah,
that we picked up. I mean, if you get the gist of our gear taste here, we get a lot of secondhand gear, we get a lot of old gear, but we feel really confident in that gear, and this is definitely one of those choices.
This axe head I bought at a yard sale for $4, I think, probably 5 years ago. So the head is actually, so the handle cost me $12. The handle is worth more dollars and cents wise than the head is. But this is got to be a 100-year-old axe. This is what our grandparents used to build the country with. It's just plenty good for us. The bow saw, we got this at a yard sale.
I think it was $5. We put a new blade on it, but
yes. Actually, we didn't.
No, we didn't.
The blade we took was in such good shape.
That's right.
Right, we actually took the blade that this came from a yard sale, and it's an old saw, but it was a good sharp blade.
I still use that bow saw. I love it. Wouldn't choose another saw.
One thing to mention on that is the longer we were there, these tools, the importance of these two tools came into such focus, because if we were to break either one of them, it would have been a deal breaker.
It would have totally been a deal breaker.
Having indoor heat, it pretty much, it gave us having that little cabin with a little fireplace area, it gave us indoor heat. It gave us a place to get dry and get warm and to cook, and it was the center of our universe out there. And without a saw, getting stove length, getting manageable size firewood with an axe would have meant 10 times the work, and vice versa. If you broke the axe, most of that wood that was out there was too wet to burn in a full round. It had to be split, and it would have really changed the whole dynamic of everything. These two tools became so important that it's good to keep that in mind before you go out, that an axe and a saw, they go together just perfectly, and I wouldn't leave home without either one of them.
No, I wouldn't either. All right, our last item came as a bit of a surprise, to say the least, to most people, and we thought maybe we'd break the internet with this one. We chose a bar of soap for our 10th item. So, whose idea was that?
That was one of those things that when you're looking at the list they give you of these are the items, and the list's on the internet. One's a toothbrush and no, it wasn't a toothbrush. One's like a hairbrush and one
there's some goofy things to choose.
Yeah, there's some goofy stuff, filler items that nobody picks. And in that list, there's soap. Dental floss is one of them. You can pick dental floss. But in that list, there's soap, and of course, nobody's ever given soap a thought. And we'd looked that list over 100 times, and it started to really, come to mind. It's like, you know what? Having a bar of soap, that's a game changer mentally.
We've spent a lot of time in the bush. We've built, we're going on our 4th place that we're building right now in Alaska. And always while we have built, we live in campers. We live in tents. We do it the hard way. And that means you don't have running water. You don't have all the amenities that you would be accustomed to having. And you kind of learn to live with that rustic life. But as soon as you can get cleaned up, and that might be just a kettle bath, which we've taken hundreds and thousands of kettle baths, which is just a pot of water on the stove, warmed up, and you basically just kind of sponge yourself off and wash off. And you wash your hair, and it feels like you're back to day one. If we're fishing at fish camp, and you're out there for a week in the wilderness, whatever, you get cleaned up, and you just feel like it's a brand new day. Psychologically, it's just a huge boost.
That's one of the places that the whole concept for soap came from. We hadn't really given it much thought when we were looking at the list, but for years and years at our fish camp in Minto Flats, Alaska, I would keep a bar of soap in my tackle box, and it just became so important. You got 2-stroke gas and oil on your hands and fish guts, and you're out there sitting by a fire, so you're covered in smoke, and your hands, they got a crust on them, and you just feel like garbage by day 4 or so. And we knew this was going to be pretty much the same thing. But out there, you get the soap out of the tackle box, lean over the boat, wash your hands off, wash your face, or go out in the middle of the lake and scoop up a big thing of water, take a bath right in the boat, and go back to camp. And literally, you're happy to be back at camp. You're not thinking, man, I'd sure like to go somewhere and get a shower.
When Dave arrived at camp after hiking for 9 days, he was ripe, if you know what I mean.
I didn't even know I could smell that way.
I mean, it was bad. And the thought that we could, and I will say too that the bar of soap that we took was kind of an all-purpose soap. You could wash your hair, you could wash your body. I mean, so we not only did those two things, but we also washed our clothes.
Yep.
And so there was like 3 amazing things you could do with this bar of soap. And really those days that we got cleaned up, I mean, and washing your clothes, just it was such a mental boost. And those are the things that you really need out there to stay. Because everything's telling you to go home. Every day you want to go home. You want to be warm, you want to eat, you want to be clean. And here's one step closer to one of those things.
Absolutely. If you go out there and it's day after day after day, fish guts and smoke and, sweat and whatnot, you get this big, giant, running calendar of days where you feel gross and nasty. They add up. But with a bar of soap, every 5 or 6 days you get cleaned up, clean your clothes up, and it's just a fresh start. You don't feel like you've been out there for months on end. You feel like you've been out there for a week. Now you're cleaned up and it's enjoyable again. And the soap,
I would do it again.
Totally. 2 thumbs up.
I would take it again, for sure.
Absolutely. That's a shocker to a lot of people.
And that's our 10 items. We each got to take 5, and a couple of those were duplicates, but everything except the pan I would do again.
When it comes to the items we each got to take as givens, we each took a sleeping bag. I've got a review of the bag I took, which is a British military bag. Brooke has a review of the Wiggy's bag that she took.
We'll post those links below if you guys want to check out those videos.
We had a 1/2 inch by 6 inch ferro rod.
We each got to take a knife. That was a gimme. And I took a Condor Woodlaw, which I still haven't cleaned up yet. This was a blank that Dave ordered, and then he put the scales on. It's a flamed maple. And then I made the sheath and kept track of the days with tick marks on my sheath, and I think you did the same thing.
Yep.
And so we've got a smaller type knife, and it was contrasted by a bigger knife, and we did that on purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And the knife I took was a Condor Hudson Bay. Both of these knives we kind of bought for this purpose, as opposed to taking something that we already had. We're like, okay, we want a small knife. We want it to be easy to sharpen. We want a large knife. We want that to be easy to sharpen. There's no sense in taking 2 small knives or 2 bolos or whatever. So we bought a couple knives that we thought fit the bill, and very happy with both of them.
Very happy. I mean, the small knife we used exclusively for cleaning all of our fish. The bigger knife, we did a lot of batoning of our smaller stuff inside.
It made a good machete too.
Right.
It also worked good as a hatchet. Anything that you needed to just chop on. Kind of a good go-between between a knife and a hatchet.
So yeah, having one of each. There's the big question. If you can only take one, which one are you going to take? We were blessed because we could have one of each. And I will say at one point Dave thought he lost his knife, and that's a good story for another video.
Yeah, that's a story for another video.
But I think I would definitely, for me personally, this is the knife I would have taken even if I went alone. I wouldn't take a big knife. What's your thoughts?
I'll say the same thing. I'm a guy that likes just a regular, small, modest-sized knife. Taking a big knife, I will say I found a million uses for a big knife. And I'm not a carver. I'm not a guy that sits around and whittles, so I don't really care about making spoons or knickknacks or whatnot. But having something to chop with, I found a million times I was reaching for this knife to chop. And I would take my knife again too.
So there you go. It all comes down to what feels right in your hand, and at the end of the day, that knife is way too big for me personally. So
Yep.
this was custom fit for me. He put the scales on. I love the way it fits in my hand. In that bigger knife, although I did use it a couple times, it's just too big for me.
One thing I'll say on that too, I would be happy with a knife the size of the one Brooke has, and it also has a good point. It's got a nice sharp point to it, where this knife, it's just kind of got a big blah point, and you do need a good point. Having something like a stitching awl, something that's solid with a razor sharp point, would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Or a small knife. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, that's it, guys. There's our 10 items plus our, our give me's, which were the knives, the clothes on our back, the ferro rod, and sleeping bag. That's the gear we took with us.
I think it's funny when you take a look at the gear we took, and really break it down to what it was. We took a $5 bow saw. We took a $12 old axe. We took a $2 coffee pot. All the fishing line probably came in under about $7. It's all Eagle Claw monofilament from Walmart.
The tarps cost about $50 each off of eBay, and they also were a fire retardant type of tarp too. They were a little bit more expensive, but really heavy duty. Those were 12 by 12s. Right?
Yes, 12 by 12.
12 by 12 tarps, so 2 of those, the gorp, whatever the cost of that would be.
I don't know, what was the gorp? Probably 10 or 12
bucks. Probably $10 a piece.
Yeah. For your it was 2 pounds each, was 4 pounds of...
2.5 pounds.
2.5 pounds, okay.
2.5 pounds each.
Are you sure it was 2.5?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had 5 pounds of gorp that lasted us 40 days.
Brooke had a good sleeping bag. The bag I took was military, but it was also a good bag. Probably not as refined, but that's one place that I would probably say not to cut corners is...
Definitely.
You want to be warm at night. You want to be cozy. A cheap sleeping bag...
That's not the place to be cheap.
It's not the place.
Although my bag, it was only, I think, $200. My Wiggy's bag. I mean, it really is quite affordable. I was happy with my bag overall.
In the world of expedition level sleeping bags, $200 is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
But we could have bought all the rest of our stuff 10 times over for $200, because there really is a place to spend money on outdoor gear, and there's a place where you don't need to spend money. And that's a video for another time.
Yes.
The tarps, though. Absolutely not a place to cut corners on your tarp. Any tarp is better than no tarp, but a good tarp...
In the color that you want, which is white for us. You don't really find a white tarp at your neighborhood hardware store, so I had to go online for that one. But really, pretty cheap secondhand gear for the most part.
Yeah, the tarps were definitely something. If we had it to do over again, not even a question. Same tarps, spend the money for them. Sleeping bags were good. I think the sleeping bags were probably the most expensive thing we took.
Yeah.
And mine was $50, but it's mill surplus. Some British special forces guy had already slept in it for 1,000 nights when I bought it. So it was, pretty wore down, but it was a good bag. Good bags are worth money.
Well, guys, that's going to do it for us. I am Girl in the Woods.
And I'm Bush Rat. I'm not Bush Rat. I never say that.
You don't say you're Bush Radical?
Never. No. The channel's called Bush Radical.
Okay. I call you Bush Radical.
That's just weird.
Okay. Let me do that over.
All right, go ahead.
So, hey, guys, that's going to do it for me. This is Girl in the Woods. And thank you to my guest, Bush Radical, also known as Dave Whipple, my honey.
This will be 20 years this year for us.
20 years.
20 years of being
20
married.
Years.
22 years of being together.
Oh, joy.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching Bush Radical. My name is Dave Whipple, and my lovely wife, Brooke Whipple.
Girl
Be radical, eh?
Oh, I stepped on you.
You stepped on me.
I stepped on you. It was a good outtake.
That's all right.
So, hey, guys, that's... So hey guys, that's going to do it for me. Thanks for joining me today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Love to hear your comments below on what I'd love to hear your comments below on what items you would take if you got to go on the show alone. Alright guys, girl in the woods.
Oops.
Alright guys, thanks for joining me. See you next time. That's not my normal outtake.
Oh, you blew it.
What?
Hey guys, this is Girl in the Woods. Until next time, she gone.
That's dumb. I won't.
Oops.
Alright guys, see you next time. Peace out. No.
Thank you guys so much for watching Bush Radical. My name's Dave Whipple, and this is my beautiful wife, Brooke.
Oh, were you pointing at the dog?
No, I was pointing at you. Thanks for watching. Be radical, eh? See you soon.
Ugh. What? What are you doing? She wants more cranberries. She loves me more.
What we need to do is you take your dog and you stuff her in your backpack. So when you get where you're going, you got your doggie. Is there anything you want to recover?
No, I think some of it dragged on too long.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna edit.
I'm going
some
to chop
stuff.
it way down.
Yeah,
I'm
me
going to
too.
probably take most of you
Probably
out.
take all of you out.